Good morning, everyone. In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about the typography panel in InDesign and show you how to load fonts from Adobe Fonts, which was formerly known as Typekit. This is a built-in font manager within Adobe CC. So if you have Creative Cloud, you already have access to a wide variety of really great professionally designed fonts. And I'm going to show you how to activate and use those. So in my Creative Cloud panel, which I have docked to my desktop, but if you don't have it, you can just look for it on your computer. You open up the panel and you can go down here to Manage Fonts. And here it shows you all of the fonts that you currently have activated from Adobe Fonts. So I have a whole bunch, you might not have any. And within these, you can see some of the fonts that I have actually used or recommended in our typography area on the Miro board. So I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and activate those. So if you open this up and you go to Browse More Fonts, it's going to open up a browser window that will take you to Adobe Fonts. And then you can kind of look through their offerings and you can activate them directly from within this area here. So if you know what font you're looking for, obviously you could just type it in here. You can also change the sample text that you're wanting to use. And you can change the text size. We can see over here we have a few more options. There's some tags that could help you organize the fonts into different styles. And then if we lift that up, underneath that we have the classification of different font types. So the sans serif and serif are the ones that we should focus on for portfolio purposes. These will lead to more unique and fun looking fonts. And I think that what we really want to focus on is legibility and cleanness within our portfolios. So I would recommend you just stick to these first two categories. I'm going to check off sans serif. And then down here, you can control the number of fonts in the family. By default, I think this slider is set all the way to all, which would be a little bit overwhelming. And in addition, it's going to bring up fonts that only have one weight to them. And what we're looking for in a good font is something that has some flexibility over time, so that if you need to use different weights of a font, you have availability. So I would recommend bumping those sliders up a little bit. I'm going to move mine to an upper limit of 10 and drag this one up to 3 so that it at least has 3 different weights to select from. And you're going to see then the list gets smaller. I'm also going to go up here to these tags and click off clean or geometric. I think those are the ones that would suit what I'm looking for. And right off the bat, I see this Noisite Grotesque, which apparently I had liked in a previous time as well. So I have already activated 2 of these fonts, but I'm just going to go into that and take a look. So if you want to activate a font, all you need to do is just check the slider here. So let's say I already have the light and the black version, but I also want to add the regular version to my library. Then you can see it says you've activated Noisite Grotesque. So now when I open up my InDesign, that font is going to be available for me to use. If you want to activate an entire family of fonts, you can use this slider up here. So now that I've activated them, I can go to InDesign, and I'm going to open up within the Assignment 3 folder in Portfolio under Graphic Assets. I'm going to open up Colors and Typography. That brings up this document. If your workspace doesn't look like mine, I want you to go up to Window and Workspace and just make sure that you're under Typography. This is going to give you all the options that you need to do your portfolio. So making sure that you're in the typography workspace, you can pan around by holding down the space bar, and that will activate the hand tool. So if you want to move your pages around, you can use that. Space bar brings up the hand tool. If you want to zoom in and out of a spread, you can use the Control plus or Control minus to look at all of the pages that are in your spread. You can also access a full page display by going over here to this little icon called Pages, and that's going to show you all of the pages that are currently in your document. It's also going to show you this master slide panel, which we're going to talk about in a different video. For now, I would like you to just kind of look through the pages and see what's there. So we have a page that has a color palette. We have a page that has two typefaces along with a bunch of letters and numbers so that we can kind of see what those look like. Then we have this page that has a statement against a background, and this is just to test what one of the fonts would look like as more of a sentence style. And then we have this little test area down here, which has a random title, a subtitle, and a body text area. I'll just tell you a little bit about these. So we would call this level of text a heading. This would be a subheading. And this down here is called body text. You can change out the fonts or the typeface by going over here to the character palette. And if you want to expand this, you can just move your mouse over until you get the double arrow and just pull it out a little bit so that you can see these labels here. So if I go to the character palette and then I want to use the font that I just activated, which was Noisite Grotesque, I'm going to change it here. So you see it shows up automatically in InDesign, and there's a few little icons over here. One of them is show similar fonts, which would open up Adobe fonts again and try to show you similar fonts to that. And this little cloud with a check mark, which means this is a font from Adobe fonts and you have activated it. In this character palette, you also see that there's two headings up here. One is the installed and activated fonts, and this is the find more, which allows you to look for Adobe fonts directly within InDesign and activate them if you want them. So this has a list of all of the fonts that are available, and you can search for them and you can activate them here. So if you knew, again, a specific name of a font that you would be looking for, you can search for it in here and activate it directly in InDesign. So I'm going to just change that to Noisite Grotesque, and I'm going to change that. And you see that when you change the font, every font has a slightly different spacing and a slightly different sizing. So even though it's the same size as the Sophia Pro, which was the previous font, it takes up a little bit less space. That's because every font has different character size and a different way of sort of occupying the space on the page. So I want you to notice that there's differences in how fonts really relate graphically on the page. And you can adjust your boxes as you need to sort of accommodate those different sizes. You might also need to change this. For example, if you wanted it to be a little bit larger, you might need to bump that up to 31 instead of 30, and that's totally fine. So you can make adjustments to the font. You can change the font size. This is an important one. This is the line height. So if you want the font to increase the space between lines on the page, you would use this. By default, it is set to auto, which will automatically select the spacing between the lines that is determined to be best for legibility. But I have also found that some fonts, they need a little bit more space. So if we actually zoom in on this page, you can see that this font, the tails of the G are just about touching the flourishes of the F and the L. And we might want to increase that line size just a little bit to give those lines a little bit more space. So we can go here and we see the default is 33.6. So I'm going to just try 36. Already that looks better. It's a lot more legible, but I'm going to bump that up to 40 and just see if that looks okay. So when you see that you have a little red box over here, that means that your type is overset. That means there's more type than the box is currently sized to accommodate. If you want to increase this box, all you need to do is double click on the lower edge here and it will increase the size of the text box to accommodate that extra text. So because we increased the line height, the box was too small to hold in all the text, and now we can just increase it. If you want to just give it some more space because you know you're going to be adding text later, you can just drag down on this bottom handle here and take it down. So this looks better to me, and just to compare, I'm going to go back to auto. The line height between makes text more accessible. It means that we're able to distinguish between these different lines and that the letters themselves don't look squashed and like they're interfering with each other. So the rest of these options, there's a few different display modes, optical and metrics. I'm not going to get into those. They're a little bit more complicated. This one is the tracking. This is the distance between letters within a font. This is often used to take fonts that are meant for body text and turn them into sort of a more title text. So usually in titles, we don't really depend on them to be read in the same way as body text, because body text has a lot. This is where we put our descriptions. This is where we would, if we were making a report, this would be the body of our text. The title is just there to distinguish a hierarchy and to tell us where we're looking. And this can have a little bit more leeway in terms of its styling and its spacing. So I might choose to space this out by 50. And you see that that pushes the distance between the letters a little bit further apart. That might be a little too much, so I might take it back to 25. But it doesn't need to be as compressed as the body text is when we're looking at that. There are a few other options here that I wouldn't recommend messing around with. There's the vertical scale of the letters and the horizontal scale. These are a little bit more advanced, and then there's some other tools here. I would only stick to the 4 options up here and not mess around with anything else at this point until you get a little deeper into typography. So just to recap, you can change the size, you can change the line height. I would leave the optical versus metrics alone, and then you could change the tracking